we want to talk about, I want to prove this theorem about stable commutator in free groups for sort of random elements. But to do it, I need to tell you some combinatorial tools with which we can estimate stable commutator length, metrically in terms of this algebraic quantity. And the idea is so as I said before, if you have a group, you think of it as the fundamental group of a space. If you have elements in that group, you think of them as homotopy classes of loops in that space. If they're homologically trivial, you can look at maps of surfaces into the space which bound that collection of loops, and you minimize minus Euler characteristic divided by twice the degree with which you wrap around those loops, and that's stable commutator length. So in the special case of a free group, a reasonable space to take, whose fundamental group is the free group, is just a graph. And if you think of a map of a surface into a graph, well, since the image is sort of one-dimensional, the surface gets very compressed, so it sort of factors through a kind of extremely thin, skinny surface. So these surfaces are kind of recovered by these combinatorial pictures here, which you could call fat graphs. So a fat graph is just a graph together with a cyclic ordering of the edges at every vertices, and all that means is that you remember a way of thickening up the graph in order to get a surface. So I'm kind of drawing this fat graph here, this is a wedge of two circles, but implicitly I'm using the way in which the edges are embedded in the plane to say what the circular order is, and then a little regular neighborhood of that in the plane is going to be a thrice punctured sphere. And so this picture here is meant to encode the way in which this surface is mapped to your KF21. It's saying this loop here is going to map to the inverse of the A generator. This guy here is going to map to the inverse of the B generator. So they get the opposite orientation. I have it mapping to A generator and the B generator here. And so the boundary of this, if you kind of thicken up this surface and read off the oriented boundary, combinatorially what you get is you get an A, you get a B, and you get an A inverse, B inverse. So this is a surface. The Euler characteristic is -1, and it bounds the chain A plus B plus A inverse, B inverse. I'm using capital A to mean the inverse of little a, and similarly for capital B. So the Euler characteristic is -1, bounds with degree 1, so stable commutator length is at most a half. Turns out to be equal to a half. So the unit ball in the stable commutator length norm in this vector space passes through this axis here at the point 0, 2. Okay. Similarly here we have the element A commutated with B, and this fat graph now, I kind of drawn it, it doesn't immerse in the plane in that kind of, it doesn't embed in the plane in a way in which the edges are aligned, are ordered in the correct way. It doesn't immerse in the plane, so I've kind of drawn the back of it kind of going sort of in the back here, but really it's just an abstract wedge of two circles, but with a particular cyclic ordering at this edge in such a way that if you thicken it up, you get a once punctured torus rather than a thrice punctured sphere. And if you read off the boundary label, you get A, B, A inverse, B inverse. So what these fat graphs are, these are well, they're not planar. They're sitting in a surface. But apart from that, they're basically Van Kampen diagrams. And you say, well, I thought Van Kampen diagrams were supposed to have these disks, but what's the target group here? It's a free group. There are no relations, so there's no disks. So the Van Kampen diagrams are one-dimensional. So if they were planar, they wouldn't be that interesting, but they're sort of really on some surface. They can be a little bit more interesting. So this sort of generalizes and specializes what Mark was talking about. We have a kind of diagram on a more complicated surface, but the relations are essentially, there's sort of no relation, so the diagrams are really this thin diagram. But just think of them as Van Kampen diagram. So where this bubble here is not a relation, it's just, there's no space for this. The surface is, the graph, or tubular neighborhood of the graph. So here's another fat graph here. The boundary is AB, A inverse, B inverse, AB, A inverse, B inverse, which is to say 2 copies of this, plus A plus B plus A inverse B inverse. So it's two copies of this plus one copy of this, so it's at the point 2, 1. Its Euler characteristic is -2, wraps with degree 1 around that chain. So the stable commutator length is at most 1, turns out to be an equality, and this point vertex is in fact in the unit ball. Similarly, this guy has boundary A squared plus B squared plus A inverse B inverse squared plus the commutator of A and B, which is 1, 2, also has Euler characteristic -2, right? If you fit in this, you get a 4-punctured sphere, and so stable commutator length of that chain is at most 1, turns out to be exactly 1, and in fact, the unit ball in the stable commutator length norm in this two-dimensional subspace does in fact turn out to be this nice polyhedron here. I mean, you could essentially, it's sort of a symmetric thing, so it's actually an octahedron, but just take this and repeat it in the other four quadrants. And that's a kind of complete description of stable commutator length of formal linear combinations of elements of this guy and that guy. So it's kind of interesting that information can be encoded so simply, but for our purposes, this is just illustrating the idea that the way in which we're going to estimate stable commutator length is by taking the word and trying to arrange copies of that word, powers of that word, as the boundary of a fact graph in as efficient way as possible. All right. So that's the combinatorics. So now I want to go on to some probability. So we have this annoying technical problem, which is that we want to look at random words in the free group conditions to lie in the commutator subgroup. So, in fact, we're going to more or less ignore the fact that we're conditioning things to lie in the commutator subgroup. Almost completely ignore that. So, Richard Sharp proved the following nice fact, and it's not so hard to generalize it to hyperbolic groups. So if you have F, K, free of rank K, and you have N even, then a random word, reduced word of length N is in the commutator subgroup with probability, well, more or less what you'd expect. Right? If the rank of K were 1, this was Z, well, okay, so random reduced word is not exactly right in that case. But let's say the rank was 2, so the abelianization is Z2, and you think of a random reduced word as being a little bit like a random walk on the square lattice, except it can't backtrack. And if you take a random walk, you run it for length N, its sort of projection on each of the two axes has sort of distributed like approximately N to the a half. So it has one chance in N to the half of having X coordinate 0 or A coordinate 0, and one chance in N to the half of having B coordinate 0, so one chance in N to the rank on 2 of having, well, all coordinates 0. Anyway, so this one can prove. The key point is this is only a polynomial, fixed polynomial power of N. So if we want to condition on an element lying in the subgroup, all we need to do is take a random word in the free group without any conditioning and prove that it has some property which holds with a probability which is, let's prove that it has a property that fails to hold with a probability which is much smaller than this. If you have a random word and some property fails to hold with property much smaller than this, then conditioning on being in the subgroup, the property still probably holds, right? So that's you have a subset of the interval whose measure is at least 99%, and you intersect it with a subset whose measure is 5%, well, you're still going to get at least 20%. Yeah. You get at least 80% of that subinterval. Okay. So this is just, I'll put this in brackets. So in practice, this means we will just consider random words in F, random reduced words, and we'll do the conditioning at the end. After we prove that something holds with very high probability, we'll do the conditioning at the end. Okay. So the nice thing about this is that a random reduced word in a free group, where we don't worry about it being conditioned to lie in the commutator subgroup, it can be produced by, there's a very simple model to produce them, basically a nice Markov model. You basically just choose the first letter at random, then you just choose the next letter at random, subject to the constraint that it doesn't cancel the previous letter, then you just choose the next letter at random, subject to the constraint that doesn't cancel the previous letter, and so on and so forth. So it's a very simple Markov chain with 2k states and 2k minus 1 edges out of each state, and you just sort of take random walk on this sort of Markov graph, and the result reads out for you a random word in the free group. Every guy is equally likely to arise. This is a nice sort of model. Okay, so we're going to define a nice characteristic length scale. So M, our characteristic length scale, is going to be log to the base 2k minus 1 of M, which is log n over log 2k minus 1. These are the units we're going to be interested in. If you want, you can think of M as meters. So we look at a random word. So M is, of course, a function of n. K is fixed, it's just the rank of the group, but M is then really a function of n. But given n, n is sort of a characteristic sort of constant. So we look at a random reduced word of length n. So n is a characteristic length scale. If we look at the subwords, so we look at, we're going to fix some constant, let's call it little l, and then that l would be little l times m, and we're going to look at the subwords of w of length capital L. So the point is little l is fixed. As n varies, and so capital L varies, but the idea is that we're looking at things on a sort of the same scale in our arbitrarily big words. Well, the same sort of logarithmic scale in our arbitrarily big words. We're fixing some constant little l, we're looking at subwords of W of length capital L. And then the observation is to say there is a phase transition. I always wanted to use the word phase transition in a math talk. There's a phase transition at L equals 1. So what do I mean by that? For fixed L less than 1, I'll just say W looks homogeneous, extremely homogeneous on the scale L, and for L bigger than 1, W looks extremely heterogeneous on the scale L. So I'm going to quantify this a little bit. So one way of quantifying this is as follows. I'm going to define A sub L of W to be the following quantity. So I'm going to look at all words I've been using subscript for the rank of the group. I'm going to use, if I have a group, I'm going to use another subscript to mean the length of the word. This is terrible notation, but so this just means words, reduced words in this free group of rank K of length L. All right? I'm just looking at all the words of length L, and I'm going to look at the number of copies of V in W minus the number of copies of V inverse in W. Okay? And I'm dividing by 2n. Yeah. Okay, so there are, if I think of W as a word, there are not quite n subwords of length L. I mean, because they have to start somewhere and they have to end somewhere. But if I think of W as a cyclic word, then there's exactly n subwords of length L. And for each such subword, I see whether it's V or not, and I see whether it's V inverse or not. So I'm kind of counting V and V inverse twice. So if there's sort of absolutely no cancellation, I should get 1. And if there are almost exactly the same number of copies of V as there are of V inverses, you know, actually, let me look at some of the absolute values of this, is what I mean. If there's no cancellation, if every subword of length L that occurs, its inverse doesn't occur, you'll get exactly 1 here. If every time a subword V does occur, its inverse occurs with exactly the same number of occurrences, you'll get 0. Okay, so this quantity is something between 0 and 1, and it's telling you something about how homogeneous or heterogeneous the word W is on the scale L. Okay? And so the fact is that as n goes to infinity, ALW goes to 0 for L less than 1, and it goes to 1 for L bigger than 1. So you fix L, if it's less than 1, this goes to 0, but almost surely this goes to 1, almost surely. So there's perfect cancellation below the scale, perfect lack of any cancellation above the scale. And in fact, so this is the more delicate one, actually. So this is more delicate because you have to show, here this is just saying that certain things don't happen. Well, okay, that's fine. Sort of, crude estimates can show that things don't happen. Here, things are happening, but you need to show they happen with almost exactly the same, the same sort of frequency. So what we're going to do is we're just going to estimate. So we're going to fix some sigma. This is just some word, reduced word of length capital L. And here we're going to say L less than 1, and we're going to estimate the number of copies of sigma in W. And we're going to call this number C sub sigma of W. Just count the number of sigmas in W. Okay? And this is W as a cyclic word. That's not really a big deal, but anyway, as a cyclic word. Okay, so here's the point. So we have n words, n subwords of W of length L, right, because they could just start at any given point. We're going to call these V1, V2, up to Vn. So these are just a set of all subwords of W of length L. Okay, this index just says where's the first letter. The first letter starts at the first letter of W, first letter starts at the second letter of W, first letter starts at the last letter of W. So you're wrapping around cyclically. And we want to know, so these are elements, these are words, they're elements in this set FKL. So the cardinality of this set, so the size of this set is, what is it? Well, how many words are there of length L? Well, the first letter you have 2k choices, but after that you have 2k minus 1 choices. So apart from this annoying factor of sort of 2k at the start, you have exactly 2k minus 1 to the L, which is, by the definition of L, exactly equal to, again, apart from this annoying constant, this is n to the power of L, little l. Okay, so this is the point of using the sled scale, is to really, it's just to say we want to count things in terms of powers of n. That's the reasonable way to count things. So we have n words, and we have to choose n elements of a set of cardinality n to the little l. So little l is bigger than 1. Probably, you're going to choose words at most, any given word at most once. But if little n, if L is less than 1, probably what what you expect is that every word gets chosen n to the 1 minus L times. Let's ignore this factor. So we expect that C sigma should be equal to, well, 2k minus 1 over 2k into the 1 minus L. And what we need to do is to prove that this holds with an estimate on the error. Okay. This here for the moment. Okay, so supposing the VI were all chosen independently from this set.
So could you repeat why you have n power 1 minus L?
What's that?
Could you repeat why you expect n power 1?
This?
Yes.
1 minus L. I'm choosing n elements from a set with n to the L elements. So each one is chosen this n times divided by, n divided by this. Right, if I choose 7 elements from a set with 3 elements, if I choose 7 times from a set with 3 elements, each one should be chosen 7/3 time. Right, so I'm choosing n divided by this. So n divided by this is, well, 2k minus 1 on 2k, let's ignore that. N divided by n to the L is n to the 1 minus L. Yeah. So this is if everything is, okay, so if we had, if the VI were independent, then what we're doing is, if we want to know how many times we choose any specific element here, the chance every time is 1 over this quantity. So this is just a Bernoulli random variable. We're just choosing, we're saying yes or no n times independently, and each time the probability of saying yes is 1 over this amount. Okay, so this is a Bernoulli random variable, and the Chernoff inequality tells you the probability of a deviation, a large deviation from the approximate value. So the Chernoff inequality, yes. Says that, I'll just say, in words, we are very unlikely to deviate much more than, I'll just say, the square root of the expected number.
Is it Chebyshev?
No. The Chebyshev inequality, I mean, that's a useful inequality, but it's absolutely not good enough. So Chernoff inequality gives you an exponentially decaying bound on the tail. Chebyshev inequality gives you like polynomial bounds, and that's not really good enough. Well, let me say what Chernoff inequality says, actually. So Chernoff inequality says, my cheat sheet here. So we just write down the inequality. Three or two, actually, I'm not sure it's 3 or 2, but anyway. So what does this mean? So I have a Bernoulli random variable. I sort of flip a coin, so I have probability P of a 1 and probability 1 minus P of 0. I have these random variables, x1, x2, up to xn. They're all independent. They're just probability P are equal to 1, probability 1 minus P are equal to 0, and Sn is just the sum of these. And you want to know, well, okay, so your expected number of 1s is P times n, and you want to do the deviation of that, and you want to say that the deviation of that is bigger than some delta times np, so it's measuring sort of the deviation sort of multiplicatively, goes to 0 extremely fast, exponentially. And so in fact, notice you have a kind of a whole n here of slack. So basically delta could be as close as you like to the square root of np, and this would still be going to 0 exponentially fast. So what that says is that your deviation, you'll get anything just a little bit bigger than, instead of saying to the half, we'll say to the a half plus epsilon. The deviation that it's this to the roughly just a little bit bigger than the square root of the mean, it's still going to decay exponentially fast. Okay. So this is for independent variables. Well, these subwords are not independent, right? I mean, like V1 and V2 share n minus 1 letters in common. They're extremely far from being independent. So you kind of need to play a little trick to be able to use Chertov's inequality. So here's sort of the trick. It's kind of like, I don't know, Fourier analysis or something. So the idea is you fix some big constant n. Well, n only has to be at least 2. It doesn't have to be that big. But anyway, let's just fix some big constant. And what we do is we look at v sub I plus, I need a letter I haven't used. A. That's a big letter. Oh, that's a generator. It's like Q and M. So fix a big N, and then for each I mod and M, we look at the set of words like this. So we look at I, we look at I plus NM, I plus 2 NM, so on and so forth. They're going to be approximately N over NM such words. And you look at the subwords, so here's V I plus NM, V I plus 2 NM, so on and so forth. So although the words, the subwords of W are not independent, the correlation between them decays exponentially fast. Okay, so this is a very robust feature of Markov chains is that if you have a Markov chain, the present does depend on the past. Sorry, the future depends on the past, but only sort of somehow via the present. So once the past has receded into the distant past, it has less and less effect on the future. So in fact, the rate of decay is basically governed by the eigenvalue, the second biggest eigenvalue of the adjacency matrix. So if you recall from Zelmanov's talk, he was talking about expanders. If your graph, now it's a directed graph which is describing your Markov chain, if that's an expander in some sort of suitable directed version, then the rate of decay is bounded below. The exponential rate of decay is bounded below. Anyway, that's sort of neither here nor there. The point is that it's an exponential rate of decay, and what this means is that for any specific value of Vi plus, let's say, Q and M, so conditioned on any specific value of this, the probability that the next guy, Vi plus Q plus 1 and M, is equal to this word we're looking for, is equal to this probability of this is equal to, well, what should it be? It should be 2k minus 1 over 2k n to the minus L. It's equal to this plus or minus something which looks like n to the minus n m or something. Yeah. N to the minus n or something. Something like this. Okay, so the point is, if n is big enough, this is going to be much, much smaller than this. And therefore, basically just want to be less than 1 or something. Then you have to divide by 3 or something. But anyway, some constant times capital N. If capital N is big enough, this is essentially 0. This really makes no difference. So what this means is that although this guy here is not independent of this guy, whatever value this is, conditioned on that, the chance that this is sigma deviates from the value it should be, by something very, very small. Okay, so if you have a sequence of of variables, and they're not independent, but the conditional probability of each one conditional on the previous is less than or equal to some p, then you get an inequality of Chernoff type. Okay, so you get a slightly bigger p, but almost negligibly smaller, or almost negligibly bigger, but we get an inequality of this type. So amongst this collection of words, we get basically exactly the equidistribution result we want. So we can do this for each I. So I'll just say the number of copies of sigma amongst the VI plus Q and M is almost exactly, well, it's what should it be? It should be 2k on 2k minus 1 n to the, so 2k minus 1 on 2k n to the 1 minus L divided by, capital N M. So it's this plus or minus something very small with probability 1 minus something, exponential. C might have to be very, very small, but you can make it positive. Okay? The smaller you want this, the smaller C has to be. But providing this is just a little bit bigger than the square root of this, you can make C positive. Okay? So it's exponentially K. So this is amongst the VI. What about the VJ, if for some different J? Well, these guys and these guys are not independent at all. They're extremely highly correlated. But we don't care. Amongst these guys, we have almost exactly this many. Amongst these guys, we have almost exactly the same amount with the same probability. The probability, so this is sort of an amusing observation, elementary but amusing observation in probability theory. If you have two events which are almost certain, then they might not be independent, but you might as well assume that they are independent. Right? If you have two sets whose measure is 99%, then their intersection has measure at least 98%. Doesn't matter whether they're independent or not. You just can't mix them up in a way in which they avoid each other much. So amongst the VI, we have the mixing result we want with very high probability. Amongst the VJ, we have the same amount. So the mixing result for the VI and for the VJ holds with probability also like this. Now I have to sort of adjust the constant slightly. And I only have to do this capital N, little m times, and capital N is a constant, and little m is like log n. So I kind of add this constant to itself log n times. Well, okay, so this is an exponential times a log, it's the same exponential. The constant just barely changes. So I can say it holds for all of these guys, and I get exactly this estimate. So this is true, I'll just say, with error of size n to the 1 minus epsilon on 2 plus epsilon, with probability 1 minus this. So with exponentially high probability, this holds. So this was one specific word sigma of length L. How many words are there of length L? Well, there's n to the L of them, n to the L of them. There's a polynomial number of them. And for each one of them, we have an equidistribution result that holds with chance of failure exponentially small. So in fact, having this equidistribution result hold for every single word of length L also holds with probability 1 minus an exponential. And this is only polynomially many conditions that you want to hold. Each one holds with probability 1 minus an exponential. The probability they all hold is 1 minus a polynomial times an exponential, still an exponential. Right? This just goes to 0 just so damn fast that that's... Yeah. So the moral of the story is, for every sigma of length L, which is NL, L less than 1, number of copies of sigma in W is equal to, well, it's constant. I'm just going to write n to the 1 minus L plus or minus. So it's the specific constant, but I'm just suppressing, yeah, or might more like it. 2k minus 1 over 2k. The specific constant plus or minus something of size n to the 1 minus L over 2 plus epsilon
this holds with probability 1 minus an exponential. Okay. And so in particular, if we condition on being in the commutator subgroup, it still holds. This property still holds, and with basically the same probability, because an exponential is so much smaller than n to the minus k over 2, that even conditioning on being in the commutator subgroup, again, with exponentially high probability, we have this almost perfect equidistribution result of subwords of length L. Okay, so I want to say how to use this to build surfaces which are going to give an other bound. I'm not going to talk about the other inequality, but anyway, this is sort of the technically hardest. Let me just, for the sake of clarity, let me write this out as an actual theorem, so you can follow exactly what I am claiming, even if you hear every single word I said. So, just say this is a theorem or a proposition. So fix L less than 1, and let L equal L m. Remember, m was log n on log 2k minus 1. And let's let W be a random word of length n, reduced word, in Fk, conditioned to lie in the commutator subgroup, if we like. Then I'll say with probability like this. So here c is bigger than 1 and c is bigger than 0. For every sigma of length L, the number of copies of sigma in W minus 2k minus 1 on 2k n to the 1 minus L deviates from that, just say n to the 1 minus L over 2 plus epsilon. That's what holds. Okay. So there's a fixed constant such that the number of copies of sigma in W deviates from this by less than more or less the square root of this for every single sigma of length L, and that holds, not certainly, but with its overwhelming probability for all but exponentially few words, even if we condition to lie in the commutator subgroup. Okay, so the moral of the story is the set of subwords of W on scales less than this m are extremely well sort of mixed. Okay, so we're going to use this now to build some surfaces. Okay. So a tripod.
How do you use so the condition on the belonging to the commutators, it doesn't affect anything here?
Doesn't affect anything. That's all this is it's conditioning it on some subset of words whose proportion is n to the minus k over 2. The proportion of words in this is a polynomial. It goes to 0 polynomially. That's all I'm using. So if you have a condition that holds with for all but exponentially few words, then if you condition it on any other condition that holds polynomially, it still holds for all but exponentially few. Right? Just intersect together. We're saying an exponential times a polynomial is still an exponential.
So in fact, you just use the fact that the factor group, the abelian group have polynomial groups.
Yes, exactly right. You could take as target any group of sub-polynomial group. That's sub-exponential group. Well, it's a stretched exponential. So let's say any group of polynomial group, well, around that. So a tripod is a certain kind of fact graph that's the kind you probably expect. Here it is, certain kind of fact graph. So, and it's going to be decorated by words in the free group. So it's going to have some word here. I'm going to kind of draw lowercase for words and uppercase for their inverse. Right? So here's, read it off in this direction. So this is just some very simple fact graph. I mean, it's not really a fact graph. If you thicken it up, you get a surface with boundary and corners. So it's a little piece of a fact graph. Right? It's a piece of a fact graph. It's going to appear as a piece of one of our extremal surfaces. But the tripod is not just this data. So it's the tripod, it's the fact graph. I'll just say it's the fact graph plus the labels plus a choice of the copy of the boundary words in W, cyclic word W. So here's W sitting over here. We had to choose a specific location for each of these three subwords. So here's, for instance, ZX might happen to be here. XY might happen to be here, and YZ might happen to be here. So the tripod is this data. It's the choice, if you like, the tripod is the choice of three subwords of W with this particular, that can be arranged in this particular way. And we say that, we assume that, well, let's suppose that all of these words have the same length. This is the common length, it's going to be the length, edge length of the tripod. A priori, you might be interested in tripods whose edges have different lengths. I'm just going to pay attention to ones whose edges are at some specific length. Okay, so a tripod is this thing here. These words are allowed to overlap. They're definitely allowed to overlap. They don't have to be destroyed. They're just three copies of this word. It's easier to draw them non-overlapping, otherwise the picture gets messy, but they're allowed to overlap. So this is a tripod. So a junction is an even easier kind of fact graph. Okay, so it's a fact graph, again, with labels and a choice of copy of the boundary words in W. It's an even simpler fact graph. It's just this. So you have J on one side and J on the other side. And we're going to orient our junction so that we distinguish this from the other one. We're going to, if we like, we pay attention to the ordered pair, J, J. And again, together with a choice of location of these things in W. So this is a junction. So there's two things you can do to a junction. So given a junction J, you can, really bad notation, but given J a junction, you can change the order of the words. This just means put the arrow the other way. Okay, so this is just an involution, so change order. This is an involution on the set of junctions. There's another operation you can do on a junction, which is you can make it maximal. What does that mean? Well, it might just happen that the letter to the right of this, maybe some letter A, just happens to be the inverse of the letter to the left of this. It might happen. If it is, you can just add those extra letters, you can just extend this very slightly, add this A to it. Might just happen the letter to the right, to the left here, B, happens to be equal to the inverse of the letter to the left. We could then just extend this, put a little B on it. Just keep going until you can extend it no more. Okay, so that's a maximal junction. Given junction is a maximal junction. Okay?
And they can overlap also.
They can overlap too, yeah. These are just, they're allowed to overlap. It's really just copies of this in W. I don't care about how they interact with each other. Just a choice you get for each one location. So, now a tripod gives rise to three junctions in a pretty obvious way, namely just the three edges of the tripod. And we orient the junctions in the way that the arrows are just pointing outwards from the middle vertex. So we call this the boundary of a tripod. So the boundary of a tripod is three junctions. Okay, so the boundary of a tripod is three junctions. So, well, you know, that's why Z X, this goes to the tripod like this, so the junction like this, the junction like this, and the junction like this. And you kind of need to keep track of the orientations. Okay. But actually I'm going to be a little bit sneaky here. I'm going to take it to the maximal junctions. I'm going to extend these slightly if necessary, if I can. And notice, if I can extend them, I can only extend them in the direction of the arrow. I can't extend them the other way. Why not? Well, because I already know what letter is to the right of this, and I know what letter is to the left of this. And I know they're not equal because this word here is reduced. So just by definition, by the fact that the labels on the side of a factor have to be reduced, the very fact that this thing ends at this point here means that the junction Z maybe can be extended this way, but it can't be extended this way. Has to stop at this end. So the maximal junction associated to these guys, I might be able to extend it a little bit, but I can't extend it backwards. That's certainly one of the endpoints.
Just to clarify,
Yes.
tripod is just three subwords whose multiplication is 1?
No, it's three reduced subwords whose product is 1. I guess that's true, but they have to be, there has to be, you know, one can't be so completely cancel the other. It has to have a piece that's, right? It's this kind of configuration, right? These have to be well, I guess they don't have to be non-empty. Yeah, let's say they have to be non-empty. So. But it's not just that, it's also a choice of location of those subwords in W. Yes. Okay, so given a tripod, you can sort of take this sort of oriented boundary. So what we would like to do, we would like to find a collection of tripods. I'm going to call this capital T, which is, you know, formal sum of tripods, just a bunch of tripods, such that the boundary of capital T was equal to so this is a bunch of junctions. This is a bunch of junctions pointing in the opposite direction. This is what I would like to do. I'd like to find a bunch of tripods such that for every time, so here's what this means. So I've got this tripod here. I have some other tripod on this side such that this junction here, if I can extend it to some maximal guy, and this junction here, if I sort of extend it to some maximal guy, that these happen to be the same junction but with opposite orientation. Supposing I could do this, well then I could just glue up all my tripods in pairs. If I have this pair like this, I can just glue them together like this, where say this was the original tripod here, and this was the other tripod here, and they've been extended to maximal junctions here. And it's just a natural way of gluing these things, depending only on the fact that these junctions here happen to be inverse under this operation of changing orientation. So what I want to do is find some big collection of tripods with this property. If I can do this, I can just glue all these things together. I get a fat graph, because I'm gluing everything up together. I've got a fat graph. And what happens if I read the boundary labels? Well, the boundary labels here, this is a specific subword in W, some specific subword in W. Whatever I'm putting it onto, the fact that the junctions agree, the junctions are not just the words, they're also the locations in W. The fact that they agree means that as I keep reading along the sides, I continue reading the relevant word in W. So the boundary here, so I get a fact graph, Y by doing, so that the boundary of Y is a bunch of copies of, I'll just say powers, cyclic powers of W. In other words, this is a surface mapping to a KF21 whose boundary wraps around W a bunch of times. It's exactly the kind of thing that we want to get stable commutator length. Stable commutator length is the infimum over all such surfaces of minus Euler characteristic divided by degree. So what we're doing is we're building a specific fact graph, we're building a specific surface, and we're doing it by using this combinatorial condition. Well, okay, so here's sort of the trick. So just look at a junction. So let's like pick L less than 1, and L is little lm. Pick a junction, any junction J, pick a maximal junction J. Pick a junction J, I'll just say of length L over 2, and we can extend it to a maximal junction. And what we want to do is we want to say how many tripods are there with edge lengths L over 2 such that the boundary of the tripod, one of those guys is J. Right? Given our maximal junction here, how many tripods are there which glue onto this side where these edge lengths are L over 2? Well, this particular junction is some particular location in the word, right? It's J here and J here. So I know what this edge label is. I just look at the following word at length L over 2. It's, Y or something. I look at the following word here at length L over 2, maybe it's on the other side. Following word here of length L over 2, I call it Z. That's what this edge label is. That's what this edge label is here. This total length here is capital L. So these are, this and this are two of the legs of my tripod. I need to find the third leg of my tripod. I need to find a copy of the word capital Z little y in W. This is a word of length capital L. How many copies of this word are there in W? We worked that out. It's exactly number of copies of zy, or whatever it is, yz, in W is equal exactly to, I've forgotten exactly what it was, but n to the 1 minus L times 2k minus 1 over 2k or something like that. The constant might be the wrong way around, plus or minus something of size much, much smaller than that. So that's how many tripods there are on the right-hand side of J. The number of tripods on the left-hand side of J, it's going to be exactly the same number with the same estimate of the error. So if I just look at all the tripods of length L, which go on one side of J, so I just take all junctions of length L over 2, I look at their maximal junctions, I look at all tripods of length L that are on one side or the other of these junctions. That's just some big collection of tripods. This is not quite true, but the size of the difference is very, very small. It's very, very small compared to the size of T. So what I get is a fact graph, a trivalent fact graph, and notice that the edge lengths of my trivalent fact graph, almost all of the edges have length at least L over 2. So, in fact, all of the edges have length at least L over 2. Some might be bigger because some maximal junctions might happen to be a bit bigger. Most won't be bigger. Most junctions are pretty close to maximal. But it's going to be a trivalent graph. The edges are all going to be approximately length L over 2. And it doesn't quite close up. The boundary is this is small but not 0. So there's a little combinatorial trick. If we know that our word is homologically trivial, there's some way of filling in the boundary with a fact graph whose size is approximately the size of the boundary. Maybe we can do better, maybe not, but we can at least do it maybe in a sort of inefficient way. So we use this extremely nice equidistribution, sort of probabilistic argument to build almost all the fact graph, and then we just use a combinatorial argument to fill in the rest of it inefficiently, but because it makes so little difference, the macroscopic feature of the fact graph is determined by this sort of equidistribution. So we fill in a little bit at the end, we get a fact graph, its boundary is some number of copies of W. Here's where we have to use that W is homologically trivial. If W were not homologically trivial, this error term would be necessarily non-zero. So by the way, this is still true even if W were homologically essential. You can still find this extremal fact graph, blah, 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 which does in fact almost bound W. You can't quite make it bound W because W is not homologically trivial, but you can almost make it bound W. So necessarily this implies that the homological size of W is much smaller than W, but you knew that anyway. Anyway, so if W happens to be homologically trivial, you can sort of add in this little piece at the end, cap it all off, and you get this surface. And the moral of the story is that the stable commutator length of W is at most minus all the characteristic of the surface divided by 2 times the number of times it wraps around W. Well, you can estimate that exactly from the average edge length, since the degrees are all 3, you know exactly how many times it wraps around it divided by the other characteristic. And if you just work it out, what you get is exactly that the stable commutator length is less than or equal to n over log n log 2k minus 1 over 6 times an arbitrarily small constant with probability So that's the upper bound. The lower bound is more elementary. Basically, you just need to show that if you have any extremal surface, the average edge length can't be much bigger than L over 2. So let me very quickly explain the lower bound, sort of in a slightly hand-wavy way. Kind of out of time.
Here the probability depends on epsilon, actually.
Sorry? Yeah, it depends on epsilon, but I mean, actually, no. Capital C and little c don't depend on epsilon. Big O depends on epsilon. But, yeah, I mean, that's, yeah. I believe probably the O is smaller than this, but oh no, wait. Yeah, okay, there's a subtle issue. If n is not too big, then n has to be really big for this estimate to be good. Yeah. I mean, log n has to be really big for this estimate to be big, estimate to be good. Anyway. So here's just the lower bound. I'll just say sketch. So suppose we have some fact graph which bounds W, a multiple of W. Well, we can artificially pretend that it's trivalent. Possibly some of the vertices might be bigger than 3, but we can just pretend that there's some dummy edges of length 0, if we like. So we're just going to pretend that this thing has length, this trivalent fact graph. So now let's look at a little piece of this trivalent fact graph. So this piece here looks like a comb. Okay, so this is just some piece of this extremal trivalent fact graph. What do we want to show? We want to show that with high probability, the average edge length is at most L over 2. We want to show with high probability the average edge length is at most a half m, half a meter. M was our argument. So we just have a bunch of words here. V0, this word here. V1, V2, V3, V4, Vn. So we have n plus 1 words. N is bad. M is also bad. Jeez. Q. We have Q plus 1 subwords, Vi, each of them is at some location in W. So we have n to the q plus 1 choices for the VI. Okay? Just each one is some location in the word W. There are n choices of a location in W. So we have n to the q plus 1 choices of words. If we fix the lengths, we have n to the q plus 1 choices of words. On the other hand, this piece of this word has to be the inverse of this piece of this word. This piece of this word has to be the inverse of this piece of this word, and so on and so forth. So that costs us in coincidence. So basically, every segment of this of some length, as measured in m, costs us n to that power. So the total length of graph, so the length of graph is, let's just be length as measured in units of little m, then the cost in coincidence, so the likelihood that any particular configuration happens to match in exactly this way is the reciprocal of n to the power of this length. So you have this many degrees of freedom, and this is how much you pay in coincidence. This had better be at least as big as this. Okay, well, what is gamma here? It's the average edge length. So gamma here is equal to the average edge length times the number of edges, which is 2q plus 1. And, well, so we want q plus 1 is going to be bigger than a 2q plus 1. If a is bigger than a half and q is big, this fails badly. Right? So basically the moral of the story is a can't be bigger than a half. It can't be bigger than a half plus epsilon. So that says that the average edge length has to be smaller than equal to a half plus epsilon, and you get the lower bound, and that proves the theorem. So I have one application of this which I have to say it because it's really nice. And I promise you it's surprisingly short. So So let me prove this in the case of q equals 2. So we just have two elements. So we're looking at the unit ball. We know what these guys are because we know exactly the SCL of this, we know the SCL of this. This is the W1 axis, this is the W2 axis. We know SCL of W1 is n1 over log n1 log 2k minus 116 plus a small amount. SCL of W2 is n2 over log n2 log 2k minus 1 over 6 plus a small amount. I claim, so how do I show that the unit ball looks kind of pretty close to a octahedron? All I need to do, unit ball is convex, all I need to do is find some point on the unit ball which is pretty close to the midpoint. Right? So in fact, all I need to do is show that the SCL of W1 plus W2, so I need to show that this is pretty close to n1 over log n1 plus n2 over log n2 times log 2k minus 1 over 6 plus small. Well, n1 and n2 are big. Log n1 and log n2 are basically the same. So I might as well just say this is equal to n1 plus n2 over, well, they're equal to the max, basically. They're two big numbers. The sum of their logs is basically the log of their sum. Okay.
So it's not plus, it's product, right? W1 times W2. So you take just the product of these two.
What?
So what you're saying is that, yeah, this...
No, plus. That's the meaning of the vector space structure and being plus. But SCL of W1 plus W2 is equal to SCL W1 W2 plus or minus a half, a constant, up to a constant. And a constant is 0 because these are big numbers. And now, if W1 is random of length n1 and W2 is random of length n2, their product is random of length n1 plus n2. So we've already proved what we needed. And that's the proof. Anyway. All right, so that's it for free groups tomorrow at 1.